Welcome back to another episode of the Mills Knows Bills podcast. I'm your host, as well as CEO of MKB, Mills Bender. And with me today, I have a pretty good friend of mine, Trent, who we met at a mastermind group that we're both part of called RBO, or Real Business Owners. And we've gotten to know each other a lot online just through communicating on Facebook. But it wasn't until the last meetup, Trent, that we actually met in person, and I got to meet your lovely bride, and we got to connect over dinner and just hanging out. So I'm excited for you to be here today. But before we dive into everything that we're going to chat about, why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate it. So my name is Trent Meyer. I live in South Florida, in the Keys, actually, Florida Keys. So it's a series of islands off the tip of Florida, south tip of Florida, if you don't know about it already. I live down there, and I own an engineering and permitting company, and we specialize in marine construction, engineering and permitting. So docks, seawalls, dredging, boat lifts, all that kind of fun stuff.
It's very interesting. And I know a little bit about your story because of just how you and I met. But how did you find this business? I feel like it's not something that most people go out and intentionally seek out. How did it find you, or how did you find it?
Yeah, definitely. It's not something I grew up as a kid thinking I want to go do marine construction, engineering, and permitting. So like many things, it just kind of happens really situationally, just following the bouncing ball and just where life took me. But so I used to live in northern Illinois, Wisconsin-Illinois border, about 10 minutes south of Wisconsin. And I was working for a construction company up there, a really good family friend of mine, their company. They actually took me in. He was like a father figure to me. So he took me in, and I was working for him. And I was working for him up there. And then we were doing underground utilities and actually marinas on the Great Lakes in Wisconsin. And that was, so it had been the winter of 2017. We were finishing up a big marina in Wisconsin. And that was the same time Hurricane Irma hit down in the Keys. And I had been coming with them down here because they had they had a house in the Keys. So I would come down with them on vacation, spring break and stuff all the time. And then we got froze out that winter like you do every winter in Wisconsin and Illinois. And then we came down here after the hurricane, started doing a bunch of work down here, marine construction wise, working on marinas. And then, one thing led to another, and just kind of went from there. It's interesting.
So do you, and I know the answer, I'm just going to ask you questions just so the audience kind of figures out where you're at. Do you own your business now? How did you get to be where you're at? Can you give us a little bit more of your journey since you've been in the Keys?
Yeah, definitely. So when I came down here at first, I was working for that company. I was a project manager and estimator for them. And we ran into a situation where internally where we had tons of work. I mean, tons and tons of work. But if you don't have any permits, you can't do any of the work. So I'm just using random numbers right now, but say you had you might have $10 million in signed contracts, but if you don't have a permit to go do the work, it's the same as zero. So we were doing the construction side of things, and we were subbing out our engineering and permitting to other companies. And then they were doing it, but we weren't getting the service we desired and looked for and needed. So I saw a gap in the marketplace in that regard, that there wasn't just a lot of communication with the other companies, and we weren't getting our permits. So then we ended up basically I took those over in-house and figured out how to do it. And then we started doing our own permits. And I had kind of gotten to a point there where I was, I'll say bored, I guess, and a little bit stuck. I liked my job. I was getting paid very well and loved the people I was working for, but I just wanted to do something else. So it's funny. My original goal actually was, when I started doing it, I had the idea that I was going to start doing it on the side a little bit. And I was like, I wanted a new truck. So I was like, if I do 12 jobs a year, then I'll make whatever, $1,000 a month, and I can afford a new truck, because I didn't want to take it out of my current pay. So that was the original goal. And then, like everything else I do, I couldn't stop there and went further and further. And now, so that's what I do full time. And we went from that being the original goal of now we're doing well over 7 figures a year in revenue.
It's amazing.
Which isn't a lot to some companies, like a construction company, but our average ticket's a couple $1,000s.
Yes.
So it takes a lot to get to, over 7 figures.
No,
it's a lot of work.
You're right. I was actually talking with one of the partners of the tax firm that we're now partnered with. And, between you and I, we always say, business owners who are generating up to 10 million a year in revenue is really our sweet spot. And one of the partners asked, he's like, well, what about 25 million? I know that's more than double what you typically say, but they have very few transactions. They probably do 12 transactions a year. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Like that is the exception to the rule. But what you just said, well over 7 figures, but your average ticket is a couple grand. That's a lot. You are churning out business. And so I want to unpack that in a lot of different ways. But the first one I really want to unpack is, who do you service in your business? Who do you like to work with?
Yeah, so our end customer in almost every situation, 95% situation, is going to be a residential homeowner. So let's say you own a house in the Keys, you're on the water, you buy a new boat, and you need a dock put in, or you need a boat lift put in. So then we would do the engineered design, get with you, design it how you want it, make sure it fits all the permitting parameters so they can get approved, and then get those permits and do the plans for you. In other situations, we'll be hired by the contractor. So the contractor may have a contract with the homeowner to build it and get the engineering done, and they'll sub us out. But the end consumer is almost always the homeowner. And then we also do commercial marinas and stuff as well, where there's a lot of big REITs and different companies that just buy marinas. For example, one of them is Safe Harbor Marinas, the biggest privately owned marina company, biggest company that owns marinas in the entire United States. And they own a bunch of marinas down here, so we work for them, and different things like that. But 95% is residential homeowners.
That's crazy. And so do you only focus your efforts on the Keys, or do you work all throughout Florida, nationwide? What does that look like?
So we're a little limited to where we can go geographically, just because not every place has the restrictions that we do for permitting. Like the Florida Keys, for example, is a marine sanctuary, so they're very strict on their permitting. But you'll find Army Corps and environmental protection permits all over, like South Carolina, Outer Banks, Corpus Christi in Texas, anywhere where there's basically a wetland environment, you'll see that. But the Keys is the most strict in the United States. So like I said, we're a little bit limited geographically to that, but we started just in the Keys, and now we're doing work all throughout the state of Florida.
That's awesome. And so you work mostly with the residential homeowners, and you've partnered with some bigger names, some other construction companies and marinas and whatever that need your services. But as a business owner, you started this out as really a hobby to cover the cost of a truck. How did you go from that to where you are now? That's such immense growth that I think so many business owners could benefit from.
Yeah, definitely. And funny to add into that too is I still haven't bought the truck, so that was funny. It was one of those things where you end up working so hard for it, and then I'm like, I'm not going to go piss this away on a truck.
Right.
Drive off the lot. It was so hard to make that money, so still haven't done that. But to answer your question better, it was really, so a lot of it's just internal drive where I got one and then I want another and I want another and want another and just do the best I possibly can. But when you're doing that kind of volume and transactions, so like to get to the numbers we're doing around 300 projects a year right now. So you're doing like 1.25 every day of the week. Is what you got to sign, what you got to do, which is stressful because we don't have any kind of reoccurring revenue, right? So every day you wake up, you got to get another job to not only sustain, but to grow. So to get to that point was really just a lot of systems and processes. So it was just me originally. And when it was just me, I can only do so many a year. It wasn't possible, obviously. So then I look at where I want to start going and just start doing the backwards math. Like, okay, if we make, this much on each job, if I want to make this much money, how many projects do I need to do? And then how many I can do by myself? And then if I add somebody in this role, and this role, and this role, but still so we have 13 employees now, but even with that many people, we couldn't do what we do without really good systems and processes. So basically I became a professional in Zapier and all the different integrations and stuff. And when I tell people now that we have 400 or 500 Zaps built out across our entire company that just integrates everything, it's crazy, but it's it's a lot.
It's incredibly cool. It's funny because I I have built my own website. I do all of my Zaps. I now have an EA to help with some of those things, but for the longest time, it was just me, myself, and I identified in order to scale and grow, there are things that I need to leverage technology for first, because technology is a lot cheaper than another human. And, I'd rather pay $30 a month for Zapier than, $30 an hour to hire somebody in this role that, I need to build up the cash flow to get there first. And where I see a lot of business owners struggle is they start out as a hobby, and there's nothing wrong with that. But then they get to a point where it's not just a hobby that they've monetized, it's now a job that they own. They don't own a business, they own a job. And they find themselves struggling from going from owning a job to owning a business. And I know you're still kind of in the thick of that. You're coming out on the other end of it. I'm probably a few steps behind you in coming out of that tunnel as well. And so what are some things that you've done in your business that has really helped you go from owning a job to owning a business outside of the Zaps and hiring more people? Because there are some pieces that you have to do before you even hire people.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so what I did, well, I'll go like way back.
Do it.
Before I even hired an employee, I was scared to death to hire an employee. I didn't want to do it. I was scared to let somebody down. It wasn't even a money thing so much. I didn't want to ever have to fire anybody. I didn't want to have to do any of that. I hated firing people. I still hate firing people. But I remember it was the first RBO event ever, the one I went to, and that was my problem at the time. So a couple years ago. And I was talking to a guy at one of the breakouts, and I told him, I was just like, I got this lady I want to hire, but I'm scared, blah, blah, blah. And they kind of dug into why I was scared about it more so, like what my reasoning was behind it. And I told them, I was like, well, I'm scared to hire people. I saw my parents get fired from jobs in 2008 and lost their house and this and stuff. And like, I just don't want to do that to anybody else. And this guy, he was probably 50 years old or so. And he was like, dude, I'm 50 years old. You know how many jobs I've been fired from? They're like, you can't worry about other people like that, because number one, they may be the right person. You may not fire them. You may give them a better life than you have now. And if they do get fired, it's like, at the end of the day, I've been fired. All my friends have been fired. Everybody, it ends up working out for everybody.
Yeah.
So that kind of gave me the confidence to hire my first person. And the first person I hired was just an admin. So the first thing I took off my plate was invoicing, like scheduling stuff, invoicing, emails to a certain extent, doing estimates where I would still provide like the, I don't want to say intelligence isn't the right word, but I would provide the specific like numbers and details that person just doesn't know about for industry specific stuff. But they would actually take care of putting it into the document, formatting it, sending it out, make sure it gets signed, make sure you get the signature back, sending the deposit invoice, coding everything correctly, filing it all that kind of stuff. So that was like the very first thing I did. Then after that, I hired a project manager, and that was a big step. But the biggest thing still is going, like, to answer your question, really from transitioning from being the hands-on person doing that, was just being like super, super cutthroat and definitive in the roles. So when customers would reach out and they want to talk to me about a project, like maybe I started the project with them and maybe a project manager's handling it now, is just, and you got to say it the right way, obviously, but just basically tell them, hey, this person's managing the project now and you should go with them. And that starts out really transitionally, right? Like at first I'm still fielding the stuff and I'm just forwarding it to them, copying the customer and saying, hey, Christy, Kate, whatever their name is, can you answer this question? How do you feel about this? So-and-so needs this done. Can you please send them the file? And just kind of soft introing them. That was how I transitioned projects, because our projects are open from anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. So we have a lot of projects open that like I started or somebody else started that then has to get transitioned. So if it's transitional in nature, it kind of gets done softly like that. But when we sign new projects, there's a very distinct handoff point, because I still do all the sales and upfront meetings and stuff like that. So like when we sign a job, the customer has only talked to me at that point. And it's just really important when I go to the meeting, I preface to them, say, hey, this is my position. I come out, I do the design, talk to you about it, figure out what you can get. Then it's going to be handed over to our drafting team. You're going to be going through revisions with them. And then it's going to be handed over to our project management staff, and just really drive home, they're awesome. They're better than you at it, blah, blah, blah. So they know what's going on. And then there's still like when our project's handed off internally and I switch the assignee to the project manager, it auto emails the customer saying, hey, your project's being handed over to so-and-so. Here's their information. You'll reach out to them with any questions, comments, concerns, etc. And ever since I did that, it's just been a game changer. And I barely get people asking me stuff like that anymore. It's project management specific. And if we do, it's still, then we divert back to the same thing. Even if I know the answer, forward it to them. Hey, can you please take care of this? All that kind of stuff. So that's how you kind of get out of that. Yeah.
It sounds like you've done a really great job of communicating is what it boils down to, not just internally, but externally as well, which it is tough, especially when you're so used to doing everything yourself and it's your baby. You've built it, you've grown it. It's a part of your identity. And I'm actually just now over the last, I'd say 3-4 months, starting to get much better at not being that main point of contact outside of sales and rainmaking, but it's tough. It is. And you mentioned something earlier about being afraid to make that first hire because you were afraid of firing them. And that was something I struggled with too. And it wasn't until a meetup that I had with a different group and we had a guest speaker. And so I brought that to them. Again, an older gentleman. It's great to be able to tap into somebody's hindsight. And he said, you know what? Keep a scorecard, have them update it every week. And if you are not seeing them live up to those expectations and you have properly communicated the expectations, they understand the communications and they have capacity to actually implement those items, then after a period of time, whatever your threshold is, 30, 60, 90 days, you're not firing them, they're firing themselves. You just happen to be the messenger. And I think that mindset shift has been absolutely critical for me as I've brought on a lot of team members. And unfortunately, I've had to fire quite a few of them, even recently. And it's tough because as a business owner, you want to protect everybody and see everybody succeed and live up to the potential that you can see them having. But I see where you're coming from, where it's been tough, but communication has been the absolute key. And I see you thriving so well in that, not just personally, but through all of the apps and integrations that you've established to help further that communication. What gave you the thought process to do Zaps, to do all of that?
Oh gosh, I don't even remember, honestly. That's a really good question. I don't remember the first one I ever did. I don't remember how I found out about it either, because it was before it was mainstream. Like now it's all anybody talks about.
Yeah.
I remember, I'm trying to think. I don't remember the exact scenario, but I remember I had just an epiphany, which wasn't an epiphany because obviously somebody already thought about it. But I was like, man, what if I these two apps, I have different ones. They both do their own thing great, but like I need one to do. I know. I remember what it was now. Yeah. So my CRM pipe drive came out, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend anybody. I'm just in way too deep now to switch. But anyways, so Pipedrive came out with like a beta thing of how they had these automations built into Pipedrive, and it was like, oh, if you do this triggers this, whatever. So that really that started turning the gears in my head that was even possible. Like you could make one thing do another, whatever. Like if you click this, it'll add this to there. And I was like, that's really cool. So I started trying to use it with Pipedrive, but it did not work for what I needed it to. But then I was like, I wonder if there's a program that can take two different softwares and make them do the same thing and does it a lot better. So I just hopped on Google and searched, and that's when I found it. And I really enjoy doing that kind of stuff, like building those apps and doing all that and programming stuff. So I got really deep into it, to the point where now we have so many and it works so well, but I get bored and I'll start messing with them. And literally people at our company, they'll start emailing me because I'm usually doing it at like midnight or something stupid, like trying to tinker with it. And they'll email me. They're like, stop messing with stuff. Like it works perfectly fine. Like you're literally
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
But I like it. Yeah.
Listen, I had no idea. You said 400 to 500 zaps. I mean, you just really must hate it.
Yeah, it's yeah. No, I really, yeah.
I have maybe 5. that I've set up.
Oh, really? Oh, God.
Listen, there's room for me to do some more for sure. Yeah. But I was like, what's the bare minimum to get the maximum reward right now? Let's get that
you got to be careful too, because you'll end up making a bunch of separate ones, and they'll like link together, but you go back and look and you can make them all into one and stuff. So it's always ever evolving, never changing. I did want to touch back on one point though about hiring people, because I find like a lot of people, they don't want to hire people or scared to hire people just because they don't want to train them, whatever. They don't have the training software built out and different things like that. And one tip that I would give people that I did is, and I was blessed with this problem, because living on an island, I found out very quick that people think living on an island is cool until they live on an island, and then they're like, this sucks, and they leave. So I had a bunch of turnover when I first started. Like, they'd be down for 2 months. Oh, this is so fun, the ocean, blah, blah, blah. And then they realize there's no stores, there's no nothing. You know, it's a 3-hour drive to the airport. So I had a lot of turnover. And after I trained the first person, like, I spent all this time training them, and it was awesome. And then they left, and I was like, and I was so pissed, and I was like, I can't do this again. I can't, like, I wasted a month training this person. It was so much time, and I just couldn't fathom doing it again. So then I came up with the idea, or figured out about loom and stuff. And then when I trained the second person, I just loomed everything.
Yes.
They quit. Another one quit. But what was good is then when I hired new people each time, it was, here's the login. I put all the looms in a trainual, and then they went through the whole training platform that way. So just record everything. But even further behind that, as we grew, because that was the first position, then as we grew, when I knew I was going to start hiring the next position, what I would do is just make an outline of everything they're going to have to do. And this is me still doing it at this point. Then whenever I never took time out of my day to make a training video ever. All I did is I had the outline on my desk, and whenever that task came up, I said, okay, I need to hire this for this position in the future. Yeah. I'm just going to record it. So hit loom, and then I would just talk it while I was doing it. And then I didn't even like make an SOP, put it in training or anything. You just bank it. Just title it, whatever it was, bank it. And then when I go to hire that role, I pull up all those videos, plug it in a trainual, and then do the SOPs and all that. So just like, it doesn't need to be as hard as it seems to build out all the training, because you have to do it anyways. So just record it while you do it, and then that's it. Yeah,
that's what I've actually been doing. And it's interesting because I fired a analyst on my team and then recently rehired for that role. And I gave the entire content bank of SOPs. And with that, we identified a lot of gaps in the SOPs. Yeah. And so I said, all right, anytime you have a question, we're going to hop on a Zoom. We're going to go through it, because mine's a little bit more hands-on, because it's very subjective. It's not always just a one size fits all. And so we'll record it, and we bank that for an additional SOP. And I said, next time you do this, you're going to record yourself doing it. And so now I have my team members creating their own SOPs, and it's been a weight lifted, because now it's not like you just have a perfect system all at once. You kind of need to see what breaks, so that way you can fix it, you know?
Exactly.
I don't know about
time goes on with breaks. I just had somebody, I hired a second person for the same position, and I had them go through the same thing again. And I put this training together at this point for that role like 3 years ago. So she's messaging me the whole time, and she's like, hey, this video doesn't work anymore, or like, we're doing it different this way now. And just because it didn't get updated over time, and the first person doesn't refer back to it anymore because they know, but as things change. So when you send people through it again, like you just said, make note of all the things that don't work, have changed, whatever, and update them. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I think it's interesting. I don't know if you have this approach. I know I certainly do. I like being part of organizations like RBO and the collaborative, where we have meetups in person, because it forces me to stop being in/on the business for 2-3 days, get out of my element, and actually see what still runs versus what doesn't. Because then I come back to it with a refreshed mind and a different perspective on how to fix and solve that problem or fill that gap. Is that something that you tend to find when you go to the meetups, or do you go to the meetups for different reasons?
Truthfully, I wish I was more like that, and I should be. But when I come back, I just I have so much it's bad. I really should take a step back, like you're saying, and just identify things that are broke. but I don't. I just start fighting fires immediately.
That's fair.
But you have the right mindset, and I do not. I need to do that. I just get so in the weeds right away that like I come back 3 days later and I'm like, whew, all right, we're back. But
yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not going to say I don't have.
I'm going to take a tip from you on that.
Listen, I have a whole plethora of things that I still need to get done coming back from the last meetup. It was interesting because I stepped away and there were areas that I was like, oh, okay, I got to fix that. But then there were other areas of my business where I was like, oh, that person's a lot more capable already than I thought they were. To which then I gave a little bit more responsibility to. And it's interesting seeing how well they're handling it. But I would have never given them the opportunity because I'm a little bit of a control freak, like most business owners. Like, I'm like, no, I'll handle it, But I mean,
I think for me, it's like we have parts that work so well. So like, most of the stuff runs and like when I come back, it really is because I'm in a weird transitional phase right now. Like when I come back and I have 600 emails, 5, whatever it is, like it's actually all stuff that I need to do. And like everything else runs fine. Like our invoicing runs fine. The project management goes fine. The billing, the AR, the AP, like all that stuff runs fine. But what I still handle is like inbound customers. If there's like a real problem on a job, I got to handle that. And different things like that. So like what I'm working on hiring right now is my next position, which is replacing myself now, which would be doing like the initial customer meetings, talking to the customers, going out to the job sites and handling the front end stuff. So when I get back, it's usually all like that. So I guess I'll backtrack. I do see exactly what you're talking about. And I do realize that. I just am still in the middle of trying to figure that part out.
That's tough. The last podcast episode, the guest, he and I were talking about there's going to come a point in your business, especially if you want to sell it or pass it down to your kids, whoever it may be, right? If you're scaling it, there's going to come a point where you need to replace yourself, which could be hiring a CEO. And we were talking about how it's hard to come to that realization because it's, number one, it's a little bit of the ego, but number two, it's so ingrained that is our role, when in reality, we might not be the best fit for that role. And that's hard. That's where the ego part comes in, right? You have to admit to yourself, I might not be the best CEO. Maybe I'm a better implementer, or maybe I'm better as just at this point being above the CEO and just being the business owner. And so what are your next steps, you think, on replacing yourself in that capacity?
Oof. I'm still figuring that out.
That's fair.
And it's tough again, going back to the island thing. It's hard because a lot of my people are remote, right? So like half the people are local or local-ish, and then half are not local at all. Some of them haven't been here. So like my role that I have to replace is strictly here. Like you got to live here, you got to be here. So what I've struggled with finding is somebody that wants to be here as bad as I do and be here full time, and also has the skills to do my position. Not to say I couldn't try harder to get that. I'm probably self-sabotaging myself a little bit because I enjoy doing it. And also, it's a lot of money to hire that person too. So you take a big step back as far as, I guess one of the questions I weigh with myself all the time is in our current market, like if you just take the Florida Keys market, which is primarily where most of our business is, there's not that many people. It's only 60,000 people. We service waterfront customers only. There's only so many people on the water. The projects last, once I do a job, it lasts 20 years until it needs to be done again. So I look at, okay, to take that step back, I got to hire this person. I'm going to be out, this much more money, but is there enough market cap to offset paying that person? And that's where I teeter back and forth. I'm like, I don't know if there is. Maybe I should just keep doing it and it's going to be what it is. Or is there enough, can I pick up that much more market share where it makes sense to hire that person? And that's why I haven't really gone all in yet, because I don't know the answer to that question, to be honest with you.
I think you're asking all the right questions, though. And I think that's something that a lot of business owners forget to do, is asking the right questions and giving themselves space to get the best answer possible, And so we've talked a lot about scaling and growing a company. I know that you did some preparation in advance of this podcast. What's something that I've not asked you about that you want to talk about today?
Something you haven't asked I guess I'll say like you didn't ask about this. I guess it's kind of random, but I guess no, we touched on it a little bit how people get started, and I would just like to say this out there because I don't know if a lot of people think about it. But when you are trying to do that transitional phase from you're in another business, whatever, you want to start your business, people are like want to know how to get work, etc. Like when I started this, I had never actually filed a permit before in my life. I didn't even know what I didn't even know the right paperwork to get together to send it in. Like literally, I got my first job and I was like, well, I guess I got to figure it out now.
Yep.
I had never done it because you always subbed it out. And the way I got that job, like people think it's all like sexy, whatever, how you get the work. Like literally what I did is I made a spreadsheet of every single person I knew, like 500 people that I knew that were down here. And I put their phone number and their email on a spreadsheet. And I said, okay, because this is like the basic question I asked myself. I was like, okay, how do you get, like this is the most basic question ever. How do I get jobs? And I went, okay, well, if nobody knows that I have a business, then there's no way I'm going to get jobs.
Yep.
Like that's the most basic level of thinking. So I was like, okay, how can I get people to know that I have a business and I don't have any money? So how can I get people know I have a business without spending any money? Because I wasn't going to spend money on advertising. So I just made a spreadsheet, name, email, phone number. And I committed to calling 5 people on that list every single day and not ask them for anything. Just say, hey, it's Trent. I just want to let you know I started this business. Here's what we do. If you ever need anything like that, just let us know. And if people didn't answer, I left a voicemail, and then I would send a follow-up email. And if I did talk to them, I still send a follow-up email with their stuff. And I just did 5 a day, every single day. And I hate calling people, like cold calling people. I hate it. It's my least favorite thing to do. That's why I only did 5 a day, because I was like, if I got to get this list done, I'm not going to do it. So I just committed to the 5 a day. And that's how I got my first job. And we figured it out from there. Yeah, so it's just there's a lot of excuses you can make for not starting. It's really simple. Yeah.
And I think I love how simple it is, because very often we'll overcomplicate things. You don't need to have this grand online marketing strategy in order to have a thriving business. My friend Chloe and I talk all the time about how, would you rather be viral and have no money in the bank, or have very few people know about you in terms of virality and have a lot more money in the bank? And there's this huge disconnect today on social media where we look at these people who have thousands of followers or views, and we think that they're living this lifestyle that they can actually afford, when in reality, chances are they might not be able to afford it. And it's great that you talked about how you get started, because there's somebody listening or watching who either wants to get started but doesn't know how, or somebody who's struggling because they've overcomplicated things and they just need to go back to the basics. That's all they need to do. It's not the sexiest of things, but you know what? That doesn't always pay the bills. So being able to have that simple strategy, I think, is really, really cool. Is there anything else that you've done that's just you feel like is just so simple?
Yeah. So like it goes back to something you said a little earlier, just what is like the right questions to ask. You guys always think what your highest leverage opportunity is for your time. So after I did the just calling random people, I was like, okay. And I called one person and one person found out about me. So whatever time that took me, I called them. They know about me now. That's 1 for 1. So then I started thinking, what's a higher leverage opportunity? If I'm going to call one person, who can I call that then can tell 5 people, 10 people, 15 people, 20 people without me spending any more time on it? So then what I went to is realtors.
Love it.
Because realtors down here, they're selling a home for somebody buying a home, whatever. But either way, they're working with the buyer at the end of the day. Either they're representing the buyer and the buyer's buying the house, but the buyer's like, I like the house, but I want to know if I can put a dock here. I want to know if I can fit this boat lift here. Or they're representing the seller and the buyer comes with the same questions you're saying on the other side, but now the seller's working to figure that out for the buyer so they can obviously get their commission. So I went to realtors and same exact thing. I got, what I did was I sponsored the MLS, Flex MLS. And when I did that, I got a CSV file with every single real estate agent broker in the entire area. Printed out that spreadsheet, started calling, started emailing. And that's how I got like that really is what took off. One of the first things that took off for me was that, because now I'm calling this one realtor. Well, they might sell 30 houses that year. So now they're telling 30 people. So just asking the right questions, just highest leverage opportunity for your time. Yeah.
Brilliant. I think that's such a unique way of thinking about things. And that's a mark of a true entrepreneur, thinking about biggest impact for the smallest amount of effort. And it's not because we don't want to put in effort. It's because we want to work smarter, not harder, which is, I love the fact that you just like called people.
Oh yeah. Which, like I said, I hate, but I also hate being broke more than calling people. So
that's a huge thing that I had somebody tell me the other day. Something similar. He said, until you hate your current situation more than the effort it would take to change it, you're not going to change.
Yeah.
It's like, dang. All right. That's true. You know, you have to hate where you're currently at more than you hate the work of changing it.
1,000%. And that goes both ways too. Like now I don't have that same pain anymore because we have, tons of reoccurring, like we just have so much word of mouth now and stuff. I don't have to do a lot of that. So now I'm like, I don't do that anymore. But I did it when I needed to, and now I don't have to because it's been replaced. But yeah, you got to get to that point. Exactly. But don't get me wrong. If the pain got that bad again, I would start calling people in a second.
Of course. Yeah. A few months ago, I tried scaling my company by bringing on another salesperson. And so I took a step back in that role, and it ended up not working out. And so I had to step back into the rainmaking role. Now, a few things about that. I don't think I was ready to hire for it, which you just live and learn. But secondly, you have to go back to what you don't necessarily always love. So it's all right. It's all good. That's the part of entrepreneurship. And so we're going to wrap up this first episode. And then for those of you that are watching and listening, we're going to have a part 2, which will be fun as well. So if you are somebody in the audience who needs a permit and you are in the areas that Trent helps service, Trent, what's the best way for somebody to contact you? And it's not you, right? It's somebody on your team.
Yeah. So you can reach out. Best way is always email for me.
Okay.
info@rapidpermitting.com. So info@rapidpermitting.com. And I'll say it because everybody always messes it up. Permitting ends in 2 T's, TTING, rapidpermitting.com. I thought I was slick when I made that domain. I was like, this would be so easy for everybody. And every single time I get on the phone, they're like, TING?
You gotta buy the other domain too and just have it route to the main one.
Yeah. It was gone and it was a lot of money to buy. So I didn't get it. Yeah.
Nah.
Yep.
So that's how they can reach out if they are interested in getting a permit. If somebody wants to just pick your brain on your journey, maybe they have a struggle in terms of hiring or training and whatnot, is that the same contact method that you would want them to reach out to, or is there something else that you would suggest?
No, if they want to just talk about business or things in general, Instagram or Facebook would be the best. Facebook is just my name, Trent Meyer, and then my Instagram is Trent Meyer 727, and that's it. Yeah.
Perfect. And if you're listening to this, don't feel like you have to stop driving and write it down. All of Trent's contact information will be in the show notes or video description below. I really hope that you reach out to him if you need any help or if you just want to pick his brain. He's one of the smartest guys I know. And I don't say that lightly because I'm around a lot of smart people. And so, Trent, thank you for taking time to share your story and your journey with us. I've enjoyed getting to chat with you further, and I look forward to the next episode with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mills. Appreciate you having me.